Some people spend their lives trying not to make waves. I used to be one of them. You smile, you nod, you let a snide comment pass because she's just having a hard day or he didn't mean it like that. You become the person who absorbs. But eventually the water gets too high and even the best swimmer drowns. I came back from a professional development retreat in Asheville 2 weeks ago, eager to sleep in my own bed, touch the lemon tree on my back porch, hear the hum of the neighborhood. I'd left everything in order, refrigerator full, house clean, front porch light on a timer. My husband, Jake, had taken the week off to be with his mom, Deborah, who'd moved in temporarily after her hip surgery last spring. I dragged my suitcase up the drive, waved to Mr. Hutchkins watering his lawn next door, and noticed something that made me stop cold. There was a white SUV in our driveway. Not Jake's, not Deborah's, a stranger's. And through the front window I saw movement. A man in a navy sport coat flipping through papers on a clipboard. A woman's voice rang out. "This is the original hardwood. Cassidy was going to replace it. Thank God I stopped her. Ruin a good floor for what? A cozy cottage aesthetic." I pushed the door open. There was Deborah, dressed like she was on a home makeover show, gesturing toward the fireplace as if she owned the place. And next to her, a man in slacks and loafers, a realtor. What the hell is going on? Deborah turned mid-sentence and smiled like I was a ghost she hadn't expected to walk through the wall. "Cassidy, you're home early." "Not early on time." "What is this?" The realtor stepped forward, offering a hand. "Hi there, Jordan Crane, Crane Properties. Your mother-in-law was just showing me around. Said the family's decided to sell." "The family hasn't decided anything," I said. "I own this house alone." Jordan blinked, hand frozen midair. Deborah rolled her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you're always so territorial. It's not healthy. Jake told me how hard it's been for you lately. All that time away, the stress, the headaches. We just thought maybe it was time to simplify." "Did he now?" "Jake wasn't home." "Of course not." Deborah always made her moves when he wasn't around. And as usual, she painted herself as the martyr in a Hallmark drama. I turned to Jordan. "You're trespassing. Please leave." He didn't argue. He looked like a man who'd been sold the wrong listing. Later that night, Jake came home with Thai takeout and a tired smile, as if he hadn't been MIA in the middle of a home invasion. "What was that today?" I asked, arms crossed. "She didn't mean to." "No, you don't get to buffer. She showed my house to a realtor, Jake." He rubbed the back of his neck. "She worries about you. She manipulates. There's a difference." He paused, then offered. "You do get overwhelmed sometimes, Cass. You overthink. Maybe this house is too much right now." There it was. He didn't look at me when he said it. He just dropped my spring roll onto the plate and sat down like that was the end of it. "Jake, is there something you're not telling me?" Silence. I checked the file drawer in my office that night. The deed was still there. My name, sole owner, left to me by my Aunt Cheryl, who'd raised me from age 13 like her own daughter. Jake had never paid a dime toward this house. He knew that, but something felt off. The folder had been rearranged. My power of attorney papers, usually near the back, were tucked up front. I scanned every document, suddenly doubting what I'd always assumed was solid ground beneath me. In the following days, Deborah didn't hide her contempt. "Sweetie, maybe you should lay off the coffee. You've been jittery, Cassidy. The laundry bin's full. That's not like you. Jake says you've been forgetting things lately. Is that stress or something else?" Stacy arrived a day later. Jake's younger sister. Perpetually between jobs, always overstepping boundaries with a voice that could sweeten cyanide. "Hey, Cass," she chirped, dropping her duffel in the hallway. "Figured I'd stay a few nights, help Mom out. You've got a lot on your plate." She hugged me like she knew I wouldn't hug back. "This house has such a vibe," she said that night, sipping rose from one of my crystal glasses. "You ever feel like it's haunted by your mood swings?" By the end of the week, I realized something chilling. They were building a case against me. Deborah started asking pointed questions in front of neighbors. "Cass, did you ever find your phone? You know, after that panic you had the other night." "There was no panic. You left the stove on again." "Don't worry, I caught it." "I never did." Cass has been talking in her sleep. Real dark stuff. The neighbor across the street, Marka, asked me if I was okay. Her tone was soft, pitying. And then I found it. A pill bottle, hidden in the drawer of my bedside table. White label. My name medication I'd never heard of. Antipsychotics. Beneath it, a wrinkled page with shaky handwriting that looked eerily like mine, saying things like, "Can't sleep. Can't trust them. Hear voices in the vents." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I closed the drawer, went out to the backyard, and knocked on Mr. Hutchkins' fence. "Evening, Cassidy," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Do you still have that spare motion camera from your porch set up?" He blinked. "Sure. Want it for the squirrels?" "No," I said, "for something uglier." I set up the camera discreetly, tucked it into a bookend on my bedroom shelf, covered it with a thin curtain, barely noticeable unless you knew it was there, and I waited. Stacy came into the room 2 nights later while I was asleep. The recording caught everything. How she pulled the pill bottle from her purse. How she slid the page into the drawer. How she took a photo of it all, smiling. Then she left the room like she hadn't just tried to erase a person. I didn't confront her. Not yet. They'd already filed a court request to have Jake temporarily declared legal conservator of the property, citing my declining emotional state. I received notice in the mail 3 days before the hearing. Ashley Crane, my lawyer, looked at me with mild concern when I handed her the video. "You have excellent instincts," she said. "Let's not waste this." The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I didn't paint on war paint. I didn't wear red. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I pulled on a soft gray blazer, pearl earrings I hadn't worn since Cheryl's funeral, and a pair of flats that made no sound on polished tile. I looked like the kind of woman no one would ever question. Quiet, sharp, present. Ashley met me on the courthouse steps. She carried her leather case like a scalpel. "You ready?" she asked. "Born for this," I said. I wasn't, but I'd spent enough years biting my tongue to know how to hold it now, just long enough to let the right blade land. Jake showed up alone. Deborah and Stacy walked in 5 minutes later. Deborah, dramatically holding her lower back like the mere act of breathing near me caused her pain. "You always make it so difficult." "Cassidy," she muttered as she passed. "All this theater for what?" "Funny," I said softly. "I was thinking the same thing about you." The judge was a lean woman in her 50s with no patience for nonsense. Good. I liked her already. Jake's lawyer launched into the performance. The petitioner, Mr. Brooks, seeks temporary conservatorship due to concerns regarding Mrs. Brooks's erratic behavior, potential paranoia, and compromised executive functioning. He cited the supposed panic attacks, the fabricated notes, and, of course, the antipsychotic medication discovered by concerned family members. The family is simply trying to protect Mrs. Brooks and the marital home, he concluded out of love. Ashley didn't flinch. "Your Honor," she began calmly, "we have reason to believe the so-called evidence is not only fabricated, but was knowingly planted to defame and dispossess my client of her home. May we submit video evidence for the record?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "Video?" Ashley nodded, dated and time-stamped from a private in-home security system. The screen was wheeled out. I didn't look at Stacy. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift in the room the moment she appeared on screen, creeping into my bedroom like a teenager sneaking beer, slipping a pill bottle into the drawer, snapping a photo, smirking as she left. Gasps, one muffled. "Oh my God," from Jake? "Maybe. We further submit," Ashley continued, "that Mrs. Brooks underwent an independent psychiatric evaluation 2 days prior. The doctor's report is attached. She is of sound mind, fully functional, and deeply aware of the manipulation occurring within her own household." The judge looked directly at Jake. "Mr. Brooks, were you aware of your sister's actions?" Jake opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. "No, Your Honor." "And did you attempt to verify your mother's or sister's claims regarding your wife's mental state?" "No, Your Honor." "Why not?" He glanced at me, the first time in weeks he'd really looked, and said flatly, "I didn't want to believe they'd lie to me." "But you were willing to believe they'd lie about her." He said nothing. The judge straightened her papers. "The court denies the petition for conservatorship. Furthermore, the court orders an immediate cease and desist on any real estate activity involving the property known as 12 Wakefield Drive." Ashley's voice stayed level. "Your Honor, we also reserve the right to pursue civil action for defamation, document tampering, and malicious interference. The judge nodded. Understood. Deborah stood abruptly. This is a disgrace. That house belongs to Jake's family. His father built the deck with his own hands. Ashley turned slightly. His wife paid the mortgage alone for 10 years. Oh, please, Deborah sneered. That woman would have lost her mind without us. All we did was give her a little nudge. You planted pills, Deborah, I said coldly. You lied to my neighbors. You tried to strip me of my rights and call it caregiving. That's not a nudge. That's an ambush. The room stayed quiet. Even Stacy stared at the floor. Back home, the quiet of the house rang louder than any voice. I left the court documents on the kitchen table. I didn't shout. I didn't pack anyone's bags. I just opened the windows, let in the air. Jake came in around 7, shoulders slumped like a kid who'd broken the family heirloom. Cass, he said, but I held up a hand. I'm not doing the monologue. We both know what happened. I didn't think it would go that far. But you were fine with letting it start. She's my mother and I was your wife. One of us was disposable. He lowered his head. What now? Now, I said, you decide whether you want to live with your mother, your sister, or your spine, but not with me. Deborah and Stacy moved out the next week. No tearful farewells, no apologies. Stacy's last words to me were, you know, you're kind of scary when you stop pretending to be nice. I smiled. Good. Stay scared. A few weeks later, I walked out to the fence and found Mr. Hutchkins pruning his hydrangeas. You were right, I said about. People don't change. But cameras don't lie, he chuckled. I'll drink to that. We watched a squirrel bolt across the power line, and for the first time in months, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. I wasn't back to normal. I wasn't even sure what normal was anymore. But I had my name on the deed, my voice back in my throat, and silence that I finally recognized as peace, not fear. 2 months later, the house finally felt like mine again. No footsteps echoing at 2 a.m. No whispered conversations behind half-closed doors. No Deborah hovering over my shoulder, clucking about how a real woman keeps things neat. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. But it was my quiet. Jake stayed for a while. He apologized half-heartedly in that way men do when they realize the ship is sinking, but they're not sure which hole caused the leak. He brought me flowers I didn't ask for, cooked dinner one night, and burned the salmon. Told me he just wanted to start over. Start over? I asked him with what? A clean slate. You handed my life to your mother like a pawn ticket. I didn't know she'd know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. He stopped trying after that. He started sleeping in the guest room, saying it was because of his snoring. 3 weeks later, he packed a duffel bag and moved into an apartment near his gym. No fight, no tears, just a text. You deserve someone who trusts you better than I did. I didn't argue. He was right. Deborah tried to call once, left a message on my voicemail. Cassidy, you know we were only trying to help. Families should stay together. Don't be bitter, dear. Bitterness makes a woman look old before her time. I deleted it without listening to the end. The real turning point came when Marcia from across the street hosted a neighborhood brunch. Deborah had spread so many rumors that I figured half these people thought I was one step away from a psych ward. So when Marca asked if I'd come, I said yes. The table was set with muffins, bagels, and that uncomfortable silence that comes when everyone's afraid to ask the obvious question. I heard you were under a lot of stress, Marca said carefully. I smiled. You mean did I lose my mind? No, but I did lose my patience for good reason. And then calmly, methodically, I told them everything about the pills, the planted notes, the fake stories Deborah fed them. I even showed a screenshot from the court transcript where the judge dismissed Jake's petition with a sharp, Mrs. Brooks is fully capable of managing her own affairs. By the end of my story, Marcia's mouth was open and the man from 2 doors down muttered, Well, hell, we always thought Deborah was a saint. Saints don't hire realtors to steal someone else's house, I said. They laughed. It wasn't cruel laughter. It was relief. Maybe for them, maybe for me. A week later, I received a letter from Stacy. No apology, just a single line. You're tougher than you look. I respect that. I crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. Respect from someone who tried to erase me wasn't worth the paper. One Saturday morning, I sat on the porch with coffee, watching the sun climb over Wakefield Drive. Mr. Hutchkins shuffled over with his usual slow gait. "Place looks good," he said. "Thanks. It feels lighter. Funny thing about houses," he said, leaning on the fence. "They keep secrets until you're ready to air them out." I thought about that, about Cheryl, and how she taught me that love wasn't about keeping people comfortable. It was about being brave enough to tell the truth. 3 months after Jake left, I filed for divorce. The papers came back with his signature scrolled like a child's. No contest, no claim on the house, just an empty line where his name used to fit next to mine. On a quiet evening, I found myself walking through the rooms the same way Deborah once did, but this time with gratitude, not greed. I touched the door frames, the scarred kitchen table, the picture of Cheryl in the hallway. I whispered, "We're still here." And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to scream to win. I didn't need revenge that scorched the earth. My victory was the silence, the life they couldn't steal from me. A few weeks later, Marka threw another brunch, and I stopped by with a fresh-baked peach cobbler. Someone asked me if I felt safe now that I was alone. I smiled and said, "I feel safer than I ever did with a house full of people who swore they loved me while plotting to take everything I had." It got quiet. Then Marka raised her glass to Cassidy, the woman who proved we all underestimated her. That night, sitting on the porch, I realized I'd come full circle from a woman who let others speak over her to a woman who no longer needed their approval. I looked at the stars and whispered, "You always overreact, Cassidy." Not anymore. Now I act and I don't apologize, and that I think is the real kind of peace.